A lot of the signs and signals are probably hiding in plain sight and have been there for a while. But we just smack them away and think, oh, that's modern life. I don't have a right to complain. I've got a roof over my head. Like, I'm mostly fine. Not thinking that our life deserves to be thriving, not just in surviving mode.
Welcome to Season of Stuck, the podcast that takes a deep dive into the all-too-human experience of feeling stuck. I'm your host, Deanna and on this podcast, we explore all things stuck. How and why stuckness happens, what it feels like, how to learn and grow from it, and ultimately, how to get unstuck and move forward in an authentic, empowered way. If you are looking for insights, support, and community as you make your journey from stuck to unstuck, you're in the right place. Now, let's jump into today's episode. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Season of Stuck. I am your host, Deanna. If this is your first time listening, welcome. And if this is not your first time listening, welcome back. I am so happy that you're here. If there is anything that I've learned in making this podcast, it is that stuck is not a me thing, and it's not a you thing. It's a we thing. And so it only feels right that we explore stuckness as a we, together. So thank you for being here and for exploring with me. So today we're going to talk about an experience that is pretty much synonymous with stuckness, and that is burnout. If I had to wager, my guess is that you are intimately familiar with the experience of burnout and that it needs no introduction. But in case you're one of the lucky ones that has avoided this experience, burnout is a type of exhaustion that we experience in response to chronic stress and overwhelm. When you're burned out, you feel absolutely exhausted. Like your resources, physical, mental, and emotional, have been completely depleted. And that depletion can cause a host of issues. For example, when you're burned out, you might struggle with motivation or reactivity or physical ailments like headaches or stomach aches. It can feel hard to get things done. Work, and in many cases, life, can start to lose its luster. And you might find yourself feeling really resentful and cynical about whatever is driving that chronic stress, overwhelm, and burnout. For example, your job or your responsibilities as a caretaker. Clearly, burnout is not a fun experience, but it is an extremely common one. A recent study from the Boston Consulting Group found that a solid half of the workforce in the United States is grappling with burnout. And that number is even higher for certain subgroups, like women, members of the LGBTQ+ community, and people living with disabilities, who may experience up to 26% higher burnout than the average employee. In fact, burnout has become so common and pervasive in our society that in 2019, the World Health Organization officially recognized burnout as an occupational phenomenon. So, what's the deal? Why are so many people burned out and feeling stuck as a result? That is a complex question with a lot of different answers. For example, the current culture of work is absolutely burning people out. So many companies prioritize productivity over people. Workers have too much to do and not enough time to do it. They feel pressure to get it all done, and then they end up working themselves into the ground to try to do so. And burnout doesn't just happen at work. There are so many societal messages at play that contribute to the prevalence of burnout in our culture. For example, how many of you can relate to this idea of having it all? Many of us, particularly women, have been told that we not only can, but should have it all. We're supposed to have the perfect career, the perfect body, the perfect family, the perfect bank account, the perfect all the things. And in our efforts to have it all, which, side note, isn't even a real thing, we end up burning ourselves out. And in addition to our individual burnout, many of us are navigating chronic stress and overwhelm in response to the current state of the world and issues that we see and hear and watch and read about and experience every day. Issues like racism and war and anti LGBTQ rhetoric and gender inequality and the threat to women's health care. There is just so much injustice in the world, and many of us are feeling overwhelmed by the weight of it all, which can lead to this feeling of a more collective burnout. With so many different things driving the experience of burnout, there's no one size fits all solution. But there are strategies to better navigate burnout and the stuckness that comes along with it, heal from the symptoms of burnout, and put yourself in a position where you're less likely to burn out in the future. And wanting to understand those strategies, and of course, to share them with you, is what brought me to today's guest. Cara Houser, aka the Burnout Lady, is a life work integration coach, speaker, and author of the award winning book, Burned Out to Lit Up: Ditch the Grind and Reclaim Your Life. After finding herself in a period of burnout, Cara stepped away from a high pressure career and shifted her focus towards helping others avoid and recover from the burnout trap and create more balance in their work and their lives. During our conversation, Cara and I take a deep dive into how and why burnout keeps us stuck and how we can heal from burnout and get unstuck in the process, including how to determine if what you're experiencing is burnout. Hint, feeling disconnected from joy is a big red flag. Why you should consider banishing should from your vocabulary during the burnout recovery process, and why boundary setting is the most invaluable tool you have in not only recovering from burnout, but preventing it in the future. If you are currently feeling or have ever felt burned out, trust me when I say this is a conversation that you will not want to miss. So let's jump into my conversation with Cara. Cara, welcome to Season of Stuck. Thank you so much for being here.
Deanna, thanks so much for having me. It's absolutely my pleasure to be here.
I am so excited to chat with you today. We are going to be talking about an area in which you are an expert, and that is so intricately tied to the experience of stuckness, and that is burnout. So, really excited to dive in and get your insights on what is happening when we experience burnout, how that contributes to feeling of stuckness, and also how to heal from burnout and get unstuck in the process.
Yep, thank you so much. It's such a pervasive issue, and it absolutely is 100% related. It's its own form of stuckness that captures 70 to 89% of the population, apparently, at some point in their lives.
Wow.
So at some point or another, most of us are going to find ourselves in this particular little hell of stuck.
Yeah, I mean, that is a significant majority. So, very relevant to pretty much everyone listening. I guess to kick things off, I would love if you could introduce yourself to listeners and tell us a little bit about your work.
Absolutely. So my first career, 20 years of my career, was as a housing developer. It's a super high octane business. I got super burned out after the first 15 years, had a pretty bad meltdown myself. And like most folks in burnout, was just cranking along, trying to do all the things, my job, doing community things, taking care of family, my kids, extended family, whatever, until something really significant happened. It was a health emergency with my son. And it was enough of a ground shaking experience for me that it forced me to slow down and to have a big ugly cry freak out and to really take stock of what my lifestyle was doing and how my way of being was not serving me and the fact that something had to change. And one of the things that was really scary about it was this feeling of stuckness of like, I don't know, A, what's wrong with me exactly, and B, what to do about it. I don't know the first freaking step, how to get out. And I have no energy. Like I literally have at that point in time, I was so fried. Like I didn't have one brain cell to offer to making a plan, executing a plan to get out. It was just like, it's a horrible, horrible feeling to feel so broken and to not have the first clue of what to do.
Thank you for sharing that. And you brought up an experience that I think is so relevant to when we're feeling stuck. And that is this experience of being on autopilot. We're going through the motions, we're doing what needs to be done. Everything is going, going, going. And we don't have the chance to stop and breathe and ask ourselves, Is this actually the direction that we want to go? And I didn't necessarily associate that with burnout. So that's really interesting. But now that you say it, I'm like, oh, that makes total sense that like when you're in burnout, you would shut down and just kind of be going through the motions of the day.
Yeah, your stress set point when you're in that place is so high that, like, this running around like a mad woman all the time feels really normal. And it's really, really, really unsustainable, but it feels normal to you at the time. For you or me back then, I mean, having a billion things in my head and feeling like I was not doing a good job at any of them was 100% my natural stress set point. And so the problem is when your stress set point is that high, I mean, you actually don't even know how to relax. You don't know how to give yourself that space. I remember sitting in a therapist's office and having them being like, you just need to do some stuff to relax. And I was like, relax. She's like, well, what do you like to do? I was like, I don't know. Okay. Like nothing. She's like, go get a smoothie, take a walk. I'm like, oh, God, just ridiculous. Like, I don't even, it just felt so unreachable to me. And we forget how because we haven't given any time or space to relaxation or enjoyment in so long. Well, for me anyway, and for many of my clients, things like that get relegated so far down on the to-do list of stuff that's, quote, important that we just don't give a hoot about it and we don't do it. And when you don't do something like any muscle, you haven't, swam for 20 years, well, it's going to take a minute to get back into that. And it's the same thing with getting into those parts of ourselves that don't get any use for a really long time.
Ugh, I relate to that on such a cellular level. I have been in that place where I know that I want to relax, but I don't even know what that looks like. And I'm in a constant state of fight or flight and like waiting for the next shoe to drop. And it's a terrible place to be. And it feels like you can be stuck there, like when you don't know how to unwind. Before we dive too deep into the topic, I think it's important to address exactly what burnout is. I think it's a term that pretty much all of us are familiar with, but I think that there are various definitions of what burnout is and how it manifests. So, from your experience, what exactly is burnout and how and why do we get stuck there?
I like to define it as not a result of doing things wrong, but a result of hustling and grinding so freaking hard to do everything right and still feeling like a failure. So when I say everything, I mean being everything to everyone in the outside world. It has to do with trying to meet a lot of external markers of success and approval that are totally outside of our control and totally not possible. We're trying to do multiple full-time jobs, paid, domestic, whatever, side hustle. We're trying to do all this stuff at the same exact time. And then we beat ourselves up about not being able to crush the hell out of multiple full-time jobs in one day. And it's just not possible. And this feeling of being a failure really keeps us stuck because now we're our own worst enemy. And that just sucks away any lifeblood drop of energy that we might possibly have and desperately will need to help guide ourselves and nurture ourselves out.
I feel like that's a topic that's come up for me a lot recently, which is like the fallacy of having it all. Like, we, especially as women, have been sold this idea that not only can we have everything and excel at everything, but we should have everything and excel at everything. And this desire to excel in every area of our life, at our job, our relationships, exercise, diet, friendships, hobbies, learning, it's overwhelming and it is a moving target. Like, as I've gotten older, I used to buy into that fallacy and I used to spin my wheels trying to achieve it all. And I never could. And finally, I came to the realization that it's just not possible. If you're excelling in one area, it's generally at the expense of another. And this pursuit of just like killing it in every area of your life is a one-way ticket to burnout.
It is. It is absolutely. And just that realization that you described, that it's impossible means that you can't fail. You can't fail at something that's impossible because it's impossible. So this was never a game. This was a losing game. So just knowing that is like an immediate, oh, this is a totally crap con that I've been sold, and I'm going to throw it right out the window where it freaking belongs, in a dump heap. The comedian I think I mentioned to you when we were first chatting, Michelle Wolf, has this very funny bit on having it all. And she's like, and I don't want it all. She's like, how many times have you gone to an all-you-can-eat buffet and thought, I feel really good about myself? Like, if she's just very, very funny. And it's right. It's true. Like, it's about having what matters most to you in that moment and phase of your life. And we can do a lot of things in series over time, just not all at the same time, right? So there might be times where we're focusing on family relationships. There might be times where we're focusing on a new thing in our career, or even a hobby or a passion that we're really cranking up and making into something amazing. And it doesn't mean that we can't ever get to stuff. It does mean that everything can't be center stage, like you said, all the time.
Absolutely. So I have experienced burnout. You have experienced burnout. But for people who are listening who maybe aren't sure if they're in burnout or have never experienced burnout, how can you tell if you're stuck in a burnout type place? And what are the risks of being stuck in that place? Like, how does burnout actually impact our lives?
So a lot of the signs and signals are probably hiding in plain sight and have been there for a while. But we just smack them away and think, oh, that's modern life. I don't have a right to complain. I've got a roof over my head. Like, I'm mostly fine. Not thinking that our life deserves to be thriving, not just in surviving mode. So a lot of the signs are really basic stuff. You're exhausted all the time. You don't have any motivation or energy. Maybe your immune system is down and you find yourself getting sick a lot. Short temper, snapping at people, maybe for decent reason, maybe for not such a decent reason. One of them that people find surprising when I talk about it with them is, and I didn't notice it until years later looking back on my experience, but it's the loss of connection to your sense of humor, what you find fun, and any ability to access joy. And those just slip away really silently and unnoticed until one day we wake up and we realize how incredibly unfun and unjoyful our lives are. And another experience I had years ago is people would ask me what I did for fun, and I would just look at them and think, what a ridiculous question. Like, I don't have time to sleep, and I don't know, take care of my hair, and I certainly don't have time for fun. Like, what do you even mean by that? And I thought of it as like such a frivolous extra. And that is a really, really dangerous place to be, and a dangerous thought process to have. And I've come to learn since how heartbreakingly important it is to have something right at the ready that brings you joy, relaxation, like we said before, often comes with that, a sense of satisfaction and contentment. To have those things in our lives and to physically, intentionally make ample room for them. Because whatever especially as we get older and we're all this adulting and all this responsibility having, I don't know about you, but if it's not on my calendar, it doesn't happen. And so we think, well, fun shouldn't be on a calendar. That's not fun. Well, it needs to be. Just like every single other thing that matters gets onto there so that we're sure it happens. Those things absolutely need to have space on there too.
So it sounds like there are definite signs and symptoms of experiencing burnout. You're exhausted, you're a little snappy, you're not getting results, you feel like your brain isn't working well. And
you're disconnected.
And then that experience kind of sucks all of the joy and the fun and the humor out of your life, which is a really hard place to be stuck. I feel like when I've been in that place, it is hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Like when all of the joy and the fun and the humor has been sucked out of your daily experience, everything feels bland at best and like very dark at worst. So if someone is in that place, I know you said creating intentional time for fun is important, but what else can they do to start healing this burnout, both internally, like how they're feeling, and externally, what they're doing, and get themselves unstuck in the process?
So, healing from this, just like healing from anything, and healing from anything that took a whole long time to get there, is going to take some time to come out. So, that's the not fun news people like to hear. People don't like to hear. The fun news, more fun, is that it's very doable. It's very, very micro. It's very one step at a time. It's taking the habits, practices, and mindsets that have not been serving us, getting rid of those, and then replacing them with ones that do. So the basic process that I work with clients through starts with just making space in all those realms of life. Then we rebuild, and then we sustain our gains with resilience and joy practices. So the making space, one really visceral, notable win that you can check off your list, because I know you're a list checker, probably.
Yes.
A good, notable, easy to check off win is making space in the physical realm. So I'll have people and this is part of the whole journey that I just figured out by suffering through it basically 10 years ago. And I found that was what I was doing. I Marie Kondoed my house. Okay, that took me a while. And I was at that point on like a full leave from work because I needed some intervention in my mental and physical health at that time. But it can also be done in micro ways. So picking a desktop, a dresser, a closet, and just going through and looking at all the stuff like the genius woman Marie Kondo has taught us, and looking at every single thing and saying, okay, does this bring joy? And I would add, is it useful in the next 1 year of my life? So a towel in my linen closet is useful in the next 1 year of my life. 50 hotel soaps that I've been collecting, not useful in the next 1 year of my life. Those can probably go away. So deciding what's going to stay and what's going to go, it is so freaking liberating. I'm telling you, she claimed that when you make space in your mental or in your physical realm, it actually does crack open space in your mental realm. And that is so true. It's true in me and every single person I've ever talked to. And it's just a way to kickstart this process and build that little muscle.
Oh, 100%. Even now, when I'm not feeling burned out, if I'm having a bad day, if I lack motivation, if I'm struggling, one of the first things that I do is look at my physical environment. And I'm like, is it cluttered? Is it messy? Is there something that I can organize? Because there is something about the act of organizing or beautifying or infusing joy into your physical space that then gets reflected in your internal experience. So if I am feeling stressed out, oftentimes my environment feels stressful to look at. And if I can make my environment less stressful to look at, I feel less stressed internally. So that's a fantastic tip. Also, I love Marie Kondo. I also condoed my entire place and it was game changer.
I mean, she goes into so many other benefits. You end up, sometimes you look at things and you're like, oh, I remember I used to like to do that 10 years ago. I'm going to try that again. Or you look at things and you think, I literally never want to do this again. I'm going to give this away. And then you send it away with joy to its next home.
You love podcasts, and so do I. I am always on the hunt for new podcasts, and I've got some good news for you. I have found a podcast that you are going to love. It's called Blue Sky, and it's hosted by Bill Burke. Each week, Bill chats with inspiring people who are tackling the world's toughest challenges with a fresh dose of hope and optimism. Created by the Optimism Institute, Blue Sky is here to balance out all of the doom and gloom we see in the media by offering a positive, forward-thinking view of the future. From climate change to AI, homelessness to immigration, Bill and his guests cover it all, bringing in diverse perspectives that leave you feeling inspired and uplifted. Every episode reminds you that no matter how cloudy things seem, there's always a blue sky above. It's all about shifting your perspective and finding hope in even the hardest conversations. So, if you're ready for a podcast that leaves you feeling good about where we're headed, check out Blue Sky on any major podcast platform. It's the perfect way to clear the clouds and embrace a brighter future. And really, what's better than that? You had mentioned that a lot of the work in healing from burnout is this mindset shift. It's letting go of the mindset and practices that are keeping you stuck in burnout and replacing them with mindsets and practices that foster more joy, more rest, more relaxation. So, what are some of the mindsets and practices that you see people in burnout get stuck in? And what are some more helpful mindsets and practices that they can use to kind of pull themselves out of that stuck place and better heal from their burnout?
So the ones that I focus most specifically on, one of them a lot of folks have heard about before. It's growth versus fixed mindset. And there's a landmark book on it called Mindset by Dr. Carol Dweck, and she's like the mother of it. And fixed mindset is essentially like, this is how it is. I only have whatever I think I've already shown in this life is it for me. And anything else is going to be outrageously difficult and probably not worth the risk. And growth mindset is more like, I can learn and grow at any time. Today, I could decide to start something new and do it in a tiny way and build up, and I can do that. And just knowing that you can, just believing that that possibility is there and that there are much more infinite possibilities than you can see in this moment, just believing that that exists is a really important place to start. Because like you said, things get very dark and small when we get stuck in burnout and we just think, well, this is it. It's either I quit this job, move to Greece, like A or B. And there are these really extreme sets of options we give ourselves. And that is, we don't need to go eat, pray, love it to have, by the way, you should totally do that if you can. Like that sounds fun to me. But that is not the only way. We can heal in our lives right now. And in fact, the mindset work's got to be done no matter where we are. You can go to Greece, but we're going to have these same limiting beliefs that we have.
Mm-hmm.
Those are going to come with us. So this work is necessary anyway. I talk about should versus choose. Burned out people tend to be shoulders. A lot of people get stuck in this too. This is that external demands making manifest in our brain. I should be doing this. I should have done this by now. If I was a good person, I would have done that. Why can't I do this like other people? No one else seems burned out. What's my problem? I must be all alone and a loser. And like all of this really rough self-talk comes out of that. And P.S. you're not alone, like we talked about at the beginning. Like everyone's there, kind of sitting with their little lips right above the water. And everyone is at some level trying to figure it out too. So that's A. So the should is just like our inner bully, kind of. And choose is a way to take back our power and our autonomy. Again, our belief in ourselves to make different choices and giving ourselves the space and the permission to do it. Taking every single should when they come by, putting it in our journal, giving it a good clear eye with a nice bright flashlight and saying, I mean, is this really necessary? Do I need/want to do this? What might be another way? And then coming at it with a much more empowered, well, this is what I choose to do. And part of this practice, by the way, and I know you've had guests around this too, is boundary setting. And there are entire books about it written by experts. And I don't claim to be one, but I do talk about it in my book a little bit and reference a lot of good wisdom about it because it's an essential skill that always needs buffering for people who have found their way into burnout. I don't know. I think most human beings probably need a little practice in this realm. I don't know anybody who's all perfect about it. Okay. And boundary setting starts with knowing who we are and what nourishes us and what matters most so that then we can make those decisions. It's really hard to just come in from a place of being completely fried and be like, yeah, I need to chop some stuff out, but you don't know what. I know I didn't know. I was like, well, what's the problem? Well, the problem really was my whole lifestyle. Unfortunately, I needed the systems upgrade. But as we get out of that self-neglecting place and more into this place of self-possession where we really know ourselves again, and what matters, what brings us joy, what brings us meaning, then again, all these decisions around how to spend our time and energy and resources become easier. And this is why it's a journey. I think we talk about boundary setting, like making space in our schedules, literal schedules, and boundary setting, I think in like chapter 4. And then the last one is just, I call it a sabbatical style way of being, which is a little sort of esoteric sounding. And all that means is what we were saying before, which is that we can access the mindset of whatever lifestyle we want to have, and we can do that now. And we don't have to go somewhere. We don't have to spend $1 million on a retreat. We don't have to have this or that thing. We will need to do some investing in ourselves. Like if you're going to pick up a walking routine, you'll need like a pair of shoes. Okay, fine. But these are small lift things. And one more really basic thing, just to go backwards a little bit. And whenever I talk to clients about this, they're like, ah, so basic. I could do that myself. I don't need you for that. And they hadn't done it until they had a coach to help them. And that is in our morning. Most of us, when we get burned out and exhausted, we wake up, we look at that phone, and all that stuff on there dictates our mood and how we see ourselves and how we see the world as a horrible place, whatever, for that day. And so it's super important to have our first thing of the day be something more nourishing. And so a really simple habit swap, well, not easy, but simple, is to say, I'm going to get up, and instead of doing that for 20 minutes, I'm going to walk for 20 minutes. I'm just going to walk around the neighborhood for 20 minutes. And this is where the physical and the mindset, I think, have to go hand in hand, because when you're moving your body, it's a really golden opportunity for your brain to clear a little bit. And for some people, it's the first time they've had in a long time where intuition and these internal bubblings have had literally 1 second of space to bubble up and be seen, because our thinking brain has been doing all of the work. And so we haven't given our heart brain any space. Walking is a really, I walk, run, hike, or whatever most mornings. And that's the clearest brain I have. I do it, from physical health, but I do it for my mental health, frankly, more. And I bring a little notebook or my notes app, because that's when all my good ideas pop in. That's when something fresh arrives that I'm like, oh, I probably knew that for a while. But now that I had a moment for it to emerge, I can actually see it. And so we don't know exactly where all of our outcomes are going to be at the end of this journey. That's impossible for you or your coach or therapist or anybody to know. But just starting on this journey, like the closer you walk into the horizon, the further you now can see. And that's the really beautiful part of it.
I have so much to say about everything that you just said, starting with the fixed versus growth mindset. I'm so happy that you said that and that you integrate that into this work around burnout, because I think that the growth mindset is absolutely essential for getting unstuck. In order to get unstuck, you have to believe that things can change. You have to believe that you can change. And oftentimes when we're stuck, we get this, whether it's in burnout or in any area, we get this feeling that we're going to be stuck there forever. And so I think this shift to things can change at any time is like such an empowering way to look at it, and really can help usher in the first steps towards getting unstuck. I also loved what you said about not shoulding yourself. I think what's interesting about shoulding is a piece of work that I've really focused on, because I can get very caught in shoulds. I should be doing this. I should have accomplished this, blah, 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 blah. And I've paid a lot of attention to that voice. And what I find is that generally when I'm caught in the shoulds, it's about some sort of external expectation, some societal or, cultural norm that feels like, oh, well, I should want this, but I don't, but I should. And so I think a big part of burnout is this desire to keep up with what's expected of us, whether it's from society, our family, our job. And so shifting from I should to I choose, to your point, gives us our power back and really allows us to evaluate, like, okay, what are my expectations of myself? What are the things that are important to me? And what are the expectations that are being placed on me? What am I being told is important? And where is the disconnect between those two categories? So that also feels like a really powerful tool. And then also, I loved what you said about the mornings. I have found that the way that I start my day is the way that I move through the rest of my day. So if I start my day by immediately looking at my phone and getting overwhelmed by the number of emails I have to respond to or seeing like the text notifications, that anxiety and that kind of like restless feeling will carry on for the rest of the day, even if it's a day that I'm not working. Whereas if I can carve out that intentional time in the morning, I move through my day with more intentionality.
Mhm.
Yeah. So amazing tips.
Thank you. Yeah, I love that. And they're all things like you're saying that we can they don't have 5,000 steps. We can try them now. And like any habit, folks, and I know you all know this, you gotta make it really intentional for the first probably month or so for it to become one. Because our brains, and I know you've had guests on here who know a lot more about brains than I do, but what I've learned is our brains want us to keep safe, stable, the same because that doesn't require extra energy. So when you're picking up a new habit, like instead of looking at my phone for 20 minutes, I'm going to go walk around the block 3 times or whatever. If you write that down and put a little note by your bedside or whatever, or just have that when you go to bed and when you wake up, and if you just tell yourself, I know my brain's going to not want to do it for the first month, but we're going to do it anyway because we know, team us, that this is going to help us make some really healthy progress. And then just do it. Like have your shoes ready, have whatever you're going to, socks, have it out. Then just go and do it. After that period of time, your brain will then, now that's more your default mode. Now that's more your automatic way of being. And now that's more your habit. And so you won't have to fight with it anymore. And once it is, I promise, it just lays the groundwork for it's a fortification of your foundation, which now, boom, now you can start building your next habit and then the next. We don't wake up one day and have 50 new habits we're going to do. That's totally unrealistic, and it sets us up for failure and feeling badly about not doing the thing. One thing, I have people pick literally one. And then once that one thing is happening, we prove to ourselves, I can do things. I can do a new thing. Now I'm going to do a different little shift.
Oh, that reminds me of episode 5. We talked to the incredible Britt Frank, who is a therapist who wrote a book called The Science of Stuck. And she talked about how the brain is wired for survival, not for like thriving and living your best life. So even if you're stuck in a place that is not good for you, like your brain looks at that place as safe because it's known, right? And so you do meet that resistance. And she talks about a very similar strategy to what you're talking about, which is micro yeses. Like, what is the smallest thing that I could say yes to in this moment? And then without overwhelming myself. And then over time, those micro yeses compound, and then you can make bigger yeses and you can take bigger steps. And then all of a sudden, you're in a completely different place. So you are right in line with the brain experts.
Thank goodness. Yeah. And it's so true. And then we're making shifts that not only teach us that we can build habits, but literally are fortifying us. Just that little bit of walking each day gives you that little bit of endorphin. I mean, there's a lot of chemical stuff going on too that's now on your side. You're kind of aligning your mind and body and spirit all moving, conspiring to help you get where you want to go.
So good. So we've talked a lot about us as individuals feeling stuck in burnout and how to heal that burnout and get ourselves unstuck. But as you mentioned earlier, burnout is incredibly common and affects almost everyone at some point in their lives. So, what are your insights or tips on how to support someone that we love, whether that's a partner or a child or a friend or a colleague that's experiencing burnout, and giving them the space to get themselves unstuck?
Yes. This one is tough, especially can be if you're kind of a fixery kind of person like me. And
You can't see me, listeners, but I'm raising my hand in agreement. Same.
Like, if you're the kind of person that's like, I read this book, you got it.
Mm-hmm.
People, okay, this is in general, all right? And I have 2 teenagers right now, but I'm going to tell you, people, humans, teenagers, people who are feeling burned out, probably don't want to hear like all kinds of unsolicited advice. What most people don't get enough of is straight up hardcore listening. Sitting there without having anything that you expect to get across and just allowing that person to have safety in you and to be an ear for that and to help reflect back to them what they already know to be true. Most of us, all of us actually, I think, we know somewhere what we need, and it's been smacked down and smushed underground so hard by the shoulds, it's sort of invisible after a while. We can't really access it. So having somebody that we can be around that's like calm and safe, that we can share stuff with, who's going to really just kind of reflect back in a way and help us peel our own little onion back, like ask questions like, tell me more about that. I wonder why that feels that way, or whatever might allow them just a little bit of space that they need to start finding their own little ways. Now, that doesn't mean that you can never make a suggestion. Like for example, someone did suggest to me when I was burned out that I take something called MBSR, mindfulness based stress reduction class. It's an 8-week class. It's inexpensive. It's not a huge lift. You can do it while you have a job or not leaving the country. Like, it was very useful to me at the time. I wasn't really very versed in a lot of mind body practices, and it was super helpful. And also just the way it was framed, mindfulness based stress reduction. I'm like, yeah, I'm stressed. Everyone's stressed. Aren't we all stressed? I can need help with that without having to admit to the world that I'm feeling like a broken cracked egg over here. So, like, you can, as the opportunity arises. So we're offering people space. We're giving them a chance to kind of see opportunities that they want to see for themselves, and then supporting when they have an idea. And this is something I want to kind of get across to both sides of the world. When you want to make a change, you're going to have folks in your life who, for whatever reason, don't want that. And folks in your life who, for whatever reason, are more supportive of it. And being aware of that dynamic is going to be really important too. I know when I was starting to make some changes, there were people who were pretty invested in the old me who was taking care of a bunch of crap for them that I didn't really want to do and was having trouble setting boundaries on. And when I did start to do that to reclaim some of my own life better for me, those people had things to say, and they weren't cool things. And there were other people too who just looked at those changes and maybe because they felt stuck themselves, felt threatened or said some really discouraging stuff. And again, I just want to say this because it's not about you. It wasn't about me. It wasn't like they were thinking, I'm going to ruin this lady's life. It was more like it wasn't meeting their needs. And frankly, that's what a lot of us are thinking about, okay? We are responsible for our own lives. So knowing that that's not about you, and then starting to be choosy. And when you have these conversations, it'll become real clear real fast who's getting in the inner circle of you 2.0. And it's going to be the people who look at that and say, I'm so glad you said this. I feel like this is a change that you seem like you need, and I support that for you because I want you to be as healthy and happy as you can. Like, I'm on team you, and I want to be supportive of that.
Absolutely. I feel like when you were talking about not having great boundaries and doing things for people that you didn't want to do, that also resonated with me. Like, I am a historic people pleaser, and I had to do a lot of work because I was getting burned out in my people pleasing. But the fact of the matter is, when you stop people pleasing, some people stop being pleased, and you will face that resistance. You will face people who want to keep you stuck in this overwork, this overproducing, this over supporting because it benefits them. But it's like, there's a saying in recovery circles about getting sober. And it applies, I think, to any like really significant change. And it's like to think of yourself as a puzzle piece. And when you go through this significant change, your puzzle piece, the shape of it changes. And so you don't fit into your old puzzle anymore. And so then the other puzzle pieces, which are the people in your life, have one of two choices. They either adjust their shape so that they fit with your new shape, or they don't fit anymore and they have to go find another puzzle. So, yeah, I really appreciate that insight and that expect some people to give you pushback and to be invested in you staying in a burned out place, but that the people who really care for you on a deep level, not just what you do for them, but like who you are, will value the change if it's moving you in the direction that you want to go.
And it can be hard. And that's another reason why having practices where you take good, proper, strong care of yourself, that means eating right, sleeping right, moving your body, all the things that your basic building blocks of being a solid human really have to be fortified because it's hard. This is freaking hard. Some of these relationships are going to be very tough to allow to have space, but I have a really cool upshot for people. This is the fun part. New people will come into your life that are now more aligned with where you're headed. And that is so awesome and exciting. So that's the exciting part. It's not just all doldrums here, folks. Like we have some fun, like new horizons opening up too. But just knowing that it is so worth it. It is so 100%, man, worth every single thing. And it can have some challenges along the way.
Well, that ties back to the experience of stuckness, right? When you're stuck, you feel like you're going to be in the same place forever. But like such a hopeful perspective and a true perspective is that your best times could be ahead of you. Your favorite people, you may not have met them yet. And like as you grow and evolve, like attracts like. And so, to your point, when you're taking really good care of yourself, when you have really strong boundaries, when you are creating balance in your life and not getting sucked into this paradigm of burnout and overwork, you're going to attract other people who are doing the same. And you're going to have that support system to keep moving forward.
Yeah, and you're open to it all of a sudden. You can see it. Oftentimes we have resources hiding in plain sight, but it's really hard to see them when we're just in a really low buried place. But as we start to kind of emerge, it's like we're seeing with a new pair of eyes.
Mm, I love that. Cara, this conversation has been so helpful and so enlightening. As we near the end of the interview here at Season of Stuck, we have one question that we ask all of our guests. So if it's okay with you, I just have one more question for you.
Go for it.
Okay. So picturing your ideal future self, like the Cara that you are working every day to one day grow into. If she could travel back in time and talk to the present day version of you, what advice do you think that she would give you on how to navigate stuckness at this point in your life?
I think she'd say a lot of what we're saying right now, which is you can't see it right now, but there's this really cool next phase of your life, this new chapter. It's out there. And I am in a transitional space. I'm like in an empty nesting kind of a zone of life, getting there. And so I have a huge new chapter coming, and I am struggling with it a little bit, to be honest. So I think I would tell my future self, you can't see it yet, but there is this very cool and exciting next phase. And just keep going forward one step at a time, really allowing yourself to see and be called by the things that are calling you, the things and the people, and put energy into them.
That is beautiful. I love that advice. Cara, again, this has been such an incredible conversation. I feel like I am walking away with such deeper insight on what burnout is, how we get stuck there, and more importantly, how to get unstuck and kind of heal from burnout. For anyone listening who wants to connect with you or learn more about your work, how do they go about doing that?
And I just want to say I've loved this too. I mean, you are just such a powerful interviewer. It has been such really my pleasure, and
Thank
I really
you.
feel honored to be here. If folks want to find me, they can find me at carahouser.com. I'm on LinkedIn And definitely find me and connect with me there. That would be fun. And my book is on Amazon and anywhere you can find books. And you can listen to it too if you're an Audible gal like me.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Cara.
Thank you.
That's it for today. A huge thank you to our guests for their incredible insights, and a huge thank you to you, our listeners. We know that there are so many podcasts out there to choose from, and we are just so grateful that you chose ours. If you enjoyed today's episode, consider recommending the podcast to a friend or family member that you think would enjoy it. And to make sure that you never miss an episode, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever it is you get your podcasts. And while you're there, if you loved the show, please consider leaving a 5-star review. It plays such a huge part in getting this podcast out to a wider audience and ultimately supporting more people on their journey from stuck to unstuck. And to keep in touch and access even more stuck-related content, follow us on Instagram at Season of Stuck and visit our website, seasonofstuck.com, where you can sign up to get episodes delivered directly to your inbox. Thank you again for being here. It is so, so appreciated. Until next time, I'm Deanna and Cara, and you're listening to Season of Stuck.